Today's show is sponsored by the ABV Barrel Shop. The ABV Barrel Shop is located in the St. Louis metro community of Arnold, Missouri, and is the world's first single barrel only liquor store. This business is owned and operated by Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot. Head over to abvbarrelshop.com to sign up for their email and text distribution list. That way you'll know what they have in stock, what classes are coming up, and what barrel picks they have in the works. We are also sponsored by The Bar to Go. The Bar to Go offers a fully customizable carrying case that allows you to take your favorite distilled spirits or cocktail ingredients with you. Whether you're looking for yourself, a customized gift, or logo items for your business or event, The Bar to Go can help. Check them out at thebar2go.com. Use the number 2 when you type out The Bar to Go. Did you know Neely Family Distillery now ships its popular distilled spirits directly to you? To order, simply call 859-394-3258. Tell them the ABV Network sent you. And now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. This is Steve, and you're going to hear one of the interviews that is definitely in contention for our all-time great interviews. And I think, without a doubt, this is the greatest Dave Pickerell interview there ever was. I've listened to all of Dave's interviews on other podcasts and things like that because I'm a Dave fan. And I wanted to hear, because I thought when we were doing this interview, it was just special. I mean, he was in a really good mood. He liked the fact that we were actually fans and we were, enjoying his stories. And I think it just drew out more stories from him. It was one of those situations. It is really an excellent interview. I love this guy. What a great man he was, and did so much for the industry. I would love for him to be in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. Definitely something that I want to work on at some point. I've got a whole list, and we need to go through these one after another. The priority right now is Jerry Dalton, but and then probably Jason Bronner, and then Dave would be on the short list of people that we want to work to get in there, and we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen with any of that, but for right now, just enjoy this interview.
Let's drink!
An interest in how things worked led Dave Pickerell to pursue a degree in chemical engineering. His bachelor's in chemical came via scholarship where he played football for West Point. After graduating West Point and serving his commitment in the Army, he returned to the academy to teach chemistry, where they offered him the chance to get his master's in chemistry for an additional 6-year commitment. Upon completing his studies, he worked in chemical engineering, where he quickly specialized in building distilleries. One day, while working at Maker's Mark, Bill Samuels offered him the job as their VP of Operations and their master distiller. He took the position and spent 14 years with Makers. Upon leaving, he specialized in consulting for a variety of well-known companies in the distilled spirits industries. His most recent position has been serving Whistle Pig as the company's master distiller. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Dave Pickerell.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how are you today?
Hi, Dave.
How you doing?
Hey, Dave.
I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today, so that's great.
Thank you. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, and you're even in my hometown right now, St. Louis. I could have had you here. You could have come to my basement and sat in the studio with me.
Yeah, we could have breakfast together.
Yeah.
Breakfast, hang out with the coffee bags.
Yeah, yeah. That's my coffee bags behind there. They're very good for sound, by the way, is what I've been learning recently.
That's okay. I got my own coffee right here.
Well, Dave, obviously we want to hear about everything that you've got going on. There's a lot of exciting things going on with Whistle Pig, but we also like to, get to know our guests a little bit. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your life, that type of thing. We want to know who Dave Pickerell is.
Oh, well, focused. That's a good way to put it for me. I grew up just outside of Dayton, Ohio, and kind of, a little bedroom community, and growing up, we didn't have much in the way of vacations or anything like that, but our deal was we'd get up every Sunday and we'd go for a ride in the car. Mm-hmm. And it was a 56 Bel Air, the kind of two-tone, powder blue and white.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can't do that without passing a factory or two. And every time we'd go past a factory, this is before seatbelts, I'd be up on my knees, so I'm dating myself. We'd be up on my knees, looking out the window, just peppering Dad with questions. What's that tank over there? What's that pipe? How come there's smoke coming out of that thing? It wouldn't take Dad very long, and he'd go, son, the only person that understands that's the chemical engineer. And I think that was just his way of telling me to shut up. I'm not answering any more
Right.
stupid questions. But, I'd heard it every Sunday, and I remember the day I was 5 years old. I jumped out of the seat, car's still running. I'm standing in the footwell, and I looked at Dad and I said, then I'm going to be the chemical engineer because I need to understand these things. And that one thing became the focal point of literally my whole life growing up. It was all about getting to the point where I was qualified to be a chemical engineer. By the time I was 10, I knew that I needed every science and math course known to man, and that meant taking summer school because we didn't have advanced placement.
Uh-huh.
It also meant figuring out some way for someone else to pay for college because I certainly wasn't going to be able to pay. I'd already decided I was going to graduate early, and so no student loans because I couldn't sign for them. My parents certainly weren't going to kick in.
Right.
And the only way I could figure to do that was playing sports. And it wasn't, is it fun? It was, can I be good enough to earn a scholarship? So I started out with baseball because that's what all the kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a great first baseman. I had a fielder stretch that had reached halfway to the pitcher's mound, and nothing ever got by me. But I was a big guy, and I knew that I could poke that thing, and I wanted all of them to go out of the park. And by the time I was 13, I realized my batting average was worse than the pitcher, and probably wasn't going to earn a scholarship in baseball. So even though I loved it, it went by the wayside. I tried basketball, and I was good at clearing people out, but my vertical leap wouldn't clear the Sunday newspaper, so that went away. Then it narrowed down to football and track, and literally it was just there was no extra time. It was academics, it was football, it was track. By the time I was a senior, I had all of my high school's records in the indoor and outdoor shot and disc, and I was first team All-State Ohio in football. And literally, those are the things that consumed my life growing up, was academics and sports. And lo and behold, West Point offered me a full scholarship to go play football.
Wow.
Holy moly. And so that was really, other than that, it was doing anything to earn money for my potential escape. So, I sold rocks to the neighbor kids for a nickel each. Until my parents caught me, and then I had to quit that. I delivered newspapers. I would sub for anybody's route, and I remember one Sunday I delivered 348 Sunday newspapers.
Wow!
And it took me like 5 hours to get them all delivered. But shoveling snow, mowing lawns, cutting trees, anything to put a little money away to finance my escape.
Yeah.
And but that was life for me. It was always planned. It was very structured, and it took me a lot longer than I thought to get there. But I am loving life.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for your service. We certainly appreciate your commitment and your service in the Army. But tell us about your time there at West Point and playing football.
Well, it was really abbreviated in terms of football. I played for my freshman year, and we changed coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And the new coach was dedicated to not playing anybody that was recruited by the previous coach. So what actually happened is I played freshman year, and then I did not play anymore after that. But they were obligated to my scholarship, and they held true to it. So I switched over and played soccer, and I decided I was going to play every sport that I'd never heard of. Uh-huh. And so I took team handball.
Okay.
I didn't know what team handball was. It's kind of and for the folks that don't know, it's kind of a cross between basketball and soccer. You play it on a basketball court with a ball that's like a soccer ball, and you can but you got a net like soccer, and you advance the ball by dribbling and passing it. It's an odd game. So I learned that. I learned how to play handball. I'd never heard of that. I played lacrosse because I'd never heard of that before. It was just literally, what have I not heard about that looks fun? Right. And frankly, the more violent, the better, because I tried boxing, but I've got a natural back fist. And it kept getting me in trouble. So somebody finally decided that I should try karate instead, because a back fist is allowed. And lo and behold, in 1981, I wound up as a Colorado state champion for karate.
Really?
Yeah. You'd never believe it with this svelte figure that I have today. But I actually used to be able to do that the Jean-Claude Van Damme thing where you do the splits in a doorway.
Wow.
I could do that.
You wouldn't want to try that now, though, right?
Yeah, now I can split my pants in the door.
So after completing all of your studies and commitments to the military, you joined a small firm and specialized in the build-outs of distilleries. Is this correct?
Yes, it is. I was just going to be a chemical engineer. I was, I was focused, and I was scared, frankly. When I left the military, it's like, what am I going to do now? I want to be a chemical engineer. And I started sending out resumes all over the world. And the first thing is, I really wanted an expatriate assignment. So I was sending out resumes to companies in every country where I kind of sort of spoke the language. So any English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, or German-speaking country, if I could find a company that might need a chemical engineer, they got an application. They kept sending them back to their U.S. subsidiaries. I could not land an expat job, but I had 59 job offers.
Wow.
All over the U.S. and I just needed. I remember waking up one day. I was in Buffalo, and I couldn't remember what city I was in or who I was interviewing with. I was in abject panic. I finally remembered to check my day timer, and I've been religious about pulling the tabs off the corners, and so I go, okay. I'm interviewing with FMC. I'm in Buffalo, and then I decided this is nuts. The job I'm going to have is someplace in the ones I've already interviewed with.
Yeah.
But I needed a letter of reference to fill out my portfolio, so I called up my chemical engineering mentor, Dr. Charlie Plank, out of the University of Louisville. And while I was there, he had discovered that I'm an idiot savant at distilling. Truly, they called me Grain Man. And the way he discovered it, and it truly is, I'm an idiot savant. I can close my eyes and see molecules running around in a still and know where they're going and why. Uh-huh. But when we took the distillation capstone test, I got a 99. Wow. The second high score was a 35. And there were some other less beautiful names that I got from that. But he never forgot. I mean, it wasn't that I was that much smarter, because I wasn't. It was truly an idiot savant in it. And so he just kind of cherished that. And when I called him up to ask him for a letter of reference, he says, no. I go, but Dr. Plank, you're my mentor. And he goes, I'm going to tell you where you're going to work. He says, I've in 40 years, I've never done this, but I've never seen a match quite like this. He goes, there's a company here in town that's called Rotec. They specialize in engineering for beverage alcohol companies. They need you. You're going to love it. That's where you're going to work. And while I didn't take it as a command, I did take it as highly recommended. And so I interviewed with them. And in fact, they offered me a job during lunch. I took it. And the fun thing was, it was a small firm. They had 4 full-time people before I came on. But somehow they had an international reach, because the principal was literally one of the 3 smartest people I've ever known, probably the second smartest. And he was incredible at engineering distilleries. The only problem was, if you think I'm big, you've never seen John Meredith. He was a good 4 or 5 inches taller than me and a good 50 to 80 pounds heavier.
Wow.
And apparently one time in his youth, he was a very good backstroke swimmer in college, I'm told as well. But he was put on a few pounds, and apparently he was on a puddle jumper one time, and they used him for ballast. It wasn't, I need 3 people from Zone A to move to Zone C. It was, sir, would you please sit over there? And he never got on another airplane. And he would always say, well, I'd get on one if I had to, but I think that means if you put a gun to his head and threatened his family.
Yeah.
But that meant that every time the company got a job that required an airplane, I got it. So I got to work in China, Mexico, Canada, Scotland, the Dominican Republic.
Right. You didn't get your expat, but at least you got to travel around. Yeah.
At least I got to travel a lot. And because it was great fun. I got exposed to some of the best whiskeys and spirits in the world, and I made two of the worst. Literally the two worst spirits that I've ever tasted, I made. One of them was buckwheat whiskey in China, and the other was Belarusian whiskey, which was so awful. I think I have the only bottle that still exists.
Wow.
And when my kids were growing up, it was never corporal punishment. It was, Micah, go get the Belarusian whiskey. Oh, no, Dad, I promise I'll never do it again. But so I literally for 5-6 years I all over the world, and tremendous experience, and literally it led me to Maker's Mark, because one of the companies that I consulted for on and off was Maker's Mark. When I first started consulting for them, they were selling 75,000 cases a year, and it was just a tiny company. I mean, it was still mostly a Kentucky brand.
Wow.
So it's a lot of fun seeing it that early.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us about the moment when Bill Samuels Jr. offered you the job at Maker's Mark?
Oh, that was memorable.
Yeah.
It was the only time in my life I ever stuttered, by the way. But I was at Maker's. I was doing some engineering work. They'd had a little environmental issue that I was helping to fix, and so I'm outside working in that area, and Bill Samuels comes out of the office and just waves me over. And when Bill Samuels waves you, you come.
Sure.
And
Yep.
He looks at me, he goes, "Did you know we're looking for our next VP Operations and Master Distiller?" I said, "No, sir, I didn't." He goes, "Well, that explains why you didn't apply for it." He says, "We just exhausted our entire candidate pool. Didn't find anybody we like.
Wow.
Frankly, we're tired of looking. We like you, and if you want it, the job's yours."
Wow.
That was my whole interview.
That was your interview.
Literally.
You didn't even have to talk.
I looked at him, and I couldn't say yes. I just for about 30 seconds, nothing would come out of my mouth, and finally I said, "Yes, sir, I would love to do that."
Wow.
And changed hats and got to sit at Bill Samuels' feet for 14 years, and it was some of the most glorious learning time for me ever. You don't learn from Bill by him teaching. You learn by being close enough to observe.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not a mentor in a traditional sense. He doesn't set out to teach. What he does is he gives you enough rope so you can hang everybody. Uh-huh. And then if you get it wrong, he chews your butt out.
Yeah, we love that guy. God, such an amazing,
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, so incredible.
And and if you've ever met him, at some point in time, he's going to try to figure out who he knows that you know, or who he's related to that you're related to. And I think he's got 90% of Kentucky convinced that he's related to him.
Wow.
I wonder what his ties are to Canada then.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll find them.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah. That's a challenge he'll take on. Yeah. So Dave, tell us a little bit about the highs and lows of working for Maker's Mark. Obviously, a company that was pretty small at the time, and it grew, so there had to be some ups and downs. So tell us about those.
Oh yeah. So from the day I walked in, the first and foremost thing was, somebody reached over and pointed and said, "There's the bullseye. Don't ever move it." Right? And it was like every once in a while they get a micrometer out and make sure that the bullseye hadn't moved. I was allowed to shrink the target, but I couldn't ever move the bullseye. But in the process of that, I had to bring the brand from 75,000 cases up to 1.56 million.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of things you got to do,
sure, yeah.
To ensure that you can get the capacity without losing the quality. And so those were some of the biggest challenges, and some of the biggest successes was figuring out how to do that in a consistent way, and to do it while making the place prettier and prettier all the time. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the most fun things for me was that I got to become an amateur landscape architect. Literally every year they would just give me money to make something prettier.
Really?
And one year I never got to meet Bill Samuels Sr. I literally hired on just after he passed away, sadly. But he wanted a covered bridge on the site. Mm-hmm. And he had asked for one to be built on this one particular stretch of road. And everybody came back and said, well, you can't do that because that's the major thoroughfare through the distillery, and it would restrict the traffic too much. But he really wanted one so bad that he commissioned an artist one year to make a Christmas card. And he had the artist paint the covered bridge on, even though it didn't exist. For years, people would come up with the Christmas card going, where's the covered bridge? And
Right.
And so eventually the traffic continued to increase to the point where it was dangerous to ride down that road, and we finally convinced the government to put a bypass road around the distillery, and then they gave that land back to us, and we had to close it to keep people from continuing to go down the road. And I figured, well, since we got to close it anyway, let's build Mr. Samuel's Bridge.
Huh.
And so decades, a couple decades after 10, 12 years after he passed away, we finally built his bridge on the site. And but the village green that's there, the new visitor center that's inside the old warehouse, converting the distiller's house into the Samuel's house, all of that was just great fun and a challenge. I set up an arboretum while I was there. So it was just fun tangential stuff. But the big challenge was keeping the brand consistent and kind of being the guardian for the brand and mentoring the brand through that massive growth spurt. I mean, we were literally, for a while, we were doubling our profits every 3 years.
Yeah.
And doubling our case sales about every 6. And so just keeping up with that phenomenal growth rate was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I guess. We do a lot of research when we do these, and I was reading this incredible story where Bill Samuels, Jr. decided to give you a little test before he'd allow you to speak on behalf of the company. Would you mind sharing that story with the audience? Because it's incredible.
I was rough as a cob when I came to Makers. I'm the kid that grew up in the lower blue class neighborhood, and I had very little sophistication, and frankly, I still probably run my mouth a little more than I should. And they invested a lot of money in training me and sawing off the rough edges. And one of the things they did was they hired a lady named Kathleen Partlow, who was the best PR trainer in Kentucky, and maybe anywhere, I don't know, but she was incredible. And they paid her probably a ton of money, I don't know, but she deserved it, to work with me. And part of the deal was, everything from knowing when you're going to be on video, don't wear vertically striped shirts, and
even the little details.
And when you're outside and somebody wants to take your picture, look at the sun, because it's going to put you in the best light, and how not to squint while you're getting your picture taken looking at the sun. And
really?
And all the way to what to say and what not to say in difficult situations. But I mean, it was the full gamut of things with respect to PR. And so one day, Bill Samuels asked me to come up to the Louisville office, and we were going to have a senior staff meeting. And about 3/4 of the way through the meeting, he takes a phone call and says, I'm going to have to step out to deal with this. Dave, would you finish the meeting up? And as the COO, I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I'm kind of cleaning up the meeting, and the door comes flying open, and in walks Gary Rodemeyer, who is the #1 news anchor at the time in Louisville, and he's got a whole crew, lights on, cameras, and he's got a microphone, and he says something to the effect of, last night downtown somebody drank a Maker's Mark cocktail and immediately expired, and we want to know where everybody should take their bottles of Maker's Mark to turn them in. And then sticks the microphone right in my mouth. and I'm starting out, this is the first time we've heard of this.
Right.
If what you're saying is true, it's tragic, and I my heart goes out to the family, but we don't know that Makers was truly involved in this, and it could have been that the guy had a reaction to something he ate earlier in the evening. If it was the drink, it might have been the ice or the mixer or the glass. It could have been anything, and somebody could have thrown a drug in his glass. We don't know. It's premature for us to, and certainly we don't want to scare our consumers into bringing their bottles and turning them in when there may be no reason for it. So what I would ask you to do is please sit on this story until 5 o'clock this evening. Give us a chance to dig into it, find out what's going on, come back, and I'll give you an exclusive interview, and at that point in time, go to press with it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I got done with that, the lights went off. In walks Bill Samuels and Kathleen Partlow. And my heart is going, boom, boom, boom.
Am I fired? What's going on?
I can hardly take a breath.
Uh-huh.
And Bill looks at me and says, congratulations, you passed the final. You may now speak on behalf of Maker's Mark without having to consult in advance.
Can you
I
imagine?
wanted to kill him.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Brings in a news crew. With the number one guy. Not just anybody, not an intern, the number one guy, yeah.
Unbelievable. But that's the extent they went through to knock all the rough edges off of me. And they sent me to Babson College to the study of entrepreneurial business. They got me trained as a personality analyst. Just on and on. They expressed trust and confidence in me far beyond what I deserved, and to that I'm forever indebted to them. I've been gone 9.5 years. I still call him we.
Mm-hmm.
I still prank Bill Samuels too from time to time. So, it's all good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So in 2008, you actually made a change in your career, change in your life, obviously, where you left Makers to become a consultant and work independently. So what led to that, and what did you do at that point?
Well, I would say if there was one mistake that Makers made in my entire career, it was back in 2001. And it was when the Distilled Spirits Council of the U.S., the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Association, and the Ladies Association of Mount Vernon all got together and decided it was time to tell the story of George Washington as distiller. And they called up and asked if I would be willing to be one of the guys to lead the charge towards the resurrection of George Washington's distillery. And Makers said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say it was a mistake is because it's kind of like, we've all had this. At some point in time, you've gone to a bar or some social deal and you see somebody that looks interesting. And you walk over and you say hi. And the hi leads to a conversation, and maybe the conversation leads to a drink or two, and eventually that leads to dinner, and pretty soon it's a full-blown romance. Well, that was me and rye whiskey. And literally, I began to, at Makers, you can't talk rye, you can't think rye, you certainly can't have any rye on site.
Mm-hmm.
And so here I am dreaming about what the perfect rye whiskey would be like, and using all my spare time to go to all the distilleries in the world that made rye whiskey, and trying to figure out what the most beautiful rye whiskey in the world would be like. And certainly in 2001, there was no way to take action on it because rye whiskey was a dead category, essentially. Nobody was spending marketing money on it, and every year it was dropping a few more people. And frankly, I think I only knew one person that drank rye whiskey, and that was an uncle, our great uncle. You go to family reunions sometimes, all the kids just kind of cloister together and pray that the adults leave them alone. And my dad's mom was one of 6. And I never really knew exactly which ones were the 6 that she was related to. They were in pairs. There was Aunt Opal and Uncle Jack, and Aunt Ann and Uncle George, and there was Frida and Rye. And I didn't know which one of them I was related to, but I knew that he drank rye, and I never knew his real name. But rye whiskey was just a dead category, so even though I loved it, there was not much to do about it. And I kept staying involved in George Washington's distillery. 2004, we made the first batch of rye whiskey that had been made in 200 years there. And it was great fun. We sold the first 2 bottles for $100,000.
Wow.
So I am known for making expensive whiskeys. And we just kept staying involved. And in 2006, lo and behold, the cocktail culture started on the East and West Coast. And bartenders got tired of making all these silly, sweet drinks with sexual innuendo names like Sex on the Beach and worse, and decided that they could add some seriosity back to the deal. And so they got out the 1930 Savoy and the Jerry Thomas cocktail manuals, and they started reading, and they said, well, would you look at that? The first julep actually had rye in it. And the first Manhattan had rye in it. And before the Old Fashioned was old, it had rye in it. And they thought, well, if we want to be authentic, I guess we need rye. And the bartenders went out and started buying rye whiskey. And in 2006, the category of rye jumped 20%. And it was the first time it had gone on a rise in decades. And I'm going, and I started getting excited. It's like, yes, it's coming back. It's coming back. But still, it's just one data point. And then in 2007, it grew 30%. And by that time, I'd pretty much done everything I wanted to do at Makers. We'd gotten the cost structure right. We'd gotten the facilities right. We'd set their feet for the future, gotten the personnel where they needed to be. And I needed to move the bullseye. It's just so long you can put the bullseye in one spot. And so on April 14th of 2008, I changed careers. And my goal was to, number one, be involved in the craft spirits world and to help as many people as I could to bring craft spirits to market. And secondarily, to be directly involved in the resurgence of rye. And at the time, it was my belief, number one, rye is coming back as a trend, not as a fad. Number two, it was going to be possible to create a subcategory, rye whiskey over 6 years old. Number three, it would be possible to own that category once created. And number four, we could do it with the best tasting rye ever made. Now, people laughed at me. They go, people have been making rye whiskey for hundreds of years. What makes you think you can make the best rye whiskey? And I said, well, I don't know, but what I do know is if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. And so let's take a big high aim and let's just see where we go. And so I went tromping around looking for investors because I left my Makers without any money, and did some consulting on the side while I was doing it, and that just kind of kept me afloat. And took a little while to settle on an investor that would either believe my four tenets, or at least believe in me enough to know that I'm crazy enough to make it happen. And eventually found Raj Bhakta. And he is as crazy as I am, at least. And we shook hands the day after his birthday in December of 2009, and haven't looked back since. The fun thing is, Whistle Pig had been on the market less than 4 months, and Wine Enthusiasts gave it a 96 and said it was the best rye whiskey that they'd ever rated.
Wow.
And which gave me the feeling of vindication. And because I've always said it's not about the score or the color of the medal, it's about who you beat. And when the answer is everybody, it's pretty cool. And so that was the switch. And I still sign Makers bottles, even to this day, and it will always be we. But I'm glad for the switch, and I'm glad that I get, in addition to Whistle Pig, I get to make whatever I want to make, pretty much, and be involved. And so, while Whistle Pig is my number one gig, I'm a part owner in 6 or 7 distilleries, and consult off and on for about 100, and it feeds my ADD side very well.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that'll keep you busy for sure.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
Keeps me focused.
Keeps you focused. There you go.
I mean, it's like, it's when you deal with ADD people, it's like you feed, they're already frenetic, and so you give them speed to slow them down. It makes a lot of sense, right? It's the same way with work. If I need to be focused, I need to have a lot of things going on, because in the cacophony, somehow I find focus, and I can't explain why it works, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we like to talk about the product lineups, and you've kind of started talking about Whistle Pig. So let's kind of dig into that a little bit. I'm going to talk about each of the line extensions that you've got, and maybe let you kind of speak about each one.
Sure.
And for those people that are not familiar with them, let you kind of talk about what the consumer can expect with each one. So starting with farm stock.
Well, farm stock is, it's no secret that we started out with sourced whiskey. Mm-hmm. we had a plan A and a plan B, and plan A was to grow grain and make whiskey right on site. And the Vermont government had other plans, and it took us 4.5 years to decide that it was okay for us to have a building permit, and we needed to go. And so we went with plan B, which I'd already lined up. If you do the math on it, I won't talk much about it, but if you do the math on it, I'd already made friends with all the folks at Alberta Distillers and had ring-fenced some spirit just in case. And so we started out by going to Alberta and because they were the only people at the time that were capable of 100% Monongahela style rye. And that's what I wanted to do. And so we went to them. We made our first purchases there and launched our 10-year with distillate from Alberta. Sometime later, when we launched Old World, we went to MGPI because I needed a different source because of the spiciness of the rye. So we went to them. And then finally, a little over 2 years ago, 2 years and 2 weeks, I think it is, ago, we finally got our distillery turned on. And people are asking, when do we get to taste your distillate? And there's 2 wrong answers. The first one is, give me another 8 years, right? And the next one is, how about some White Dog? But if there's 2 wrong answers, I want to get to a yes someplace because that's just the way I roll. And so we decided farm stock would be the answer, and it's a transitional product. So conceptually, we tell the story of our migration. So 20% of the distillate is a year to 18-month old that comes from our still, and it's triple terroir: our water, our wood, and our grain, all from the same field to make our whiskey. And we think we're the first distillery in the world to be able to make the claim of triple terroir. We've even trademarked the phrase. Then the next 49% is 5 to 6 year old from Alberta that's double terroir, our water and our wood. The last 31% is 12-year-old from MGPI, single terroir, our water. And that's married together. And the concept on the marriage is, number one, to be holistically delicious. Not magically delicious, that's Lucky Charms. But holistically delicious. But we also want you to be able to taste the components, because after all, this is our response to what does our distillate taste like. So when you taste it, you can pick up some of the citrusy, grainy notes from the young rye, but you can also pick up some of the big spicy notes from the older rye and the caramel, butterscotch, and vanilla notes from the wood. And so it's a great product line. Now, this is what's on the market now is rye crop number 1. That implies there will be a 2 and a 3 and so on. And each new release will be a higher percent of our in-house spirit at an older age. So next year, for instance, it's going to be straight rye, which means the youngest spirit in there will be 2 years old. That was just, I kind of, stomped on the ground and said it will be straight rye next year. So we're almost done with the formulation for next year's, and then there will be a third and a fourth. So the astute person will buy 2 bottles, one to have and one to set back, of each of the crops, so that by the time we get to 100%, you can do a grand vertical and see how bad I screwed up. But so that's the concept behind farm stock. It's been successful beyond belief. Literally, we went around the country dropping. You can have 2 pallets for here and 2 pallets for there, and in every case, the initial drop was sold out before we could have the launch party. And so we went back around and did a second drop, and to approximately the same effect. And I've asked the production guys if they have the capability of doing one more partial drop, just so that the people that didn't get it get one more shot at it before we flip over to crop 2.
Mm-hmm. Right. So moving on to the 10-year straight rye.
Well, the 10-year is our flagship. And the 10-year is in partial fulfillment to a promise I made a friend of mine. When I first started at Makers, I'm not a pretentious guy. I'm dressed up. This is me being dressed up. Okay. I owned probably 50 ties that my kids gave me when they were growing up, and I never wore any of them. And I almost never put on a sport coat. But taking on the mantle of master distiller can be a little heady. And one time my best friend and I were someplace, and somebody asked me, so how do you drink Maker's Mark? And I looked at him in all honesty, and I said, neat, like I made it, unless you're a wuss, and then maybe a little water or ice, but come on, dude. And my best friend knows, he's going, dude, you're going over the edge. And he said, so after everybody was gone, he comes up to me and he goes, hey, Dave, I'm going to have a bourbon and Coke tonight. I'm just feeling it. And I go, okay. He said, would a Maker's and Coke be better? And I said, Aaron, knowing what I know about your palate, yes, you would like a Maker's and Coke better. And he said, then shut up, quit telling me how to drink what I'm paying for and get me a Maker's and Coke. And it had a profound impact on me because it made me realize it's not my job to tell you how to drink it. It's my job to make it so good you can have it however you want. And so the Whistle Pig 10 is a fulfillment to that promise. It's Mr. Versatile. It's 100% rye. It's a full-bodied taste product. It's 10 years old. It's engineered so that it doesn't have a bitter taste to it. So when you taste it, irrespective of what proof it is, it's not going to burn the back of your throat. And that's true of all the Whistle Pig line. Excuse me. In particular with the 10-year-old, it's 100 proof. But because of the way we double barrel age and avoid the tannins and lift up the caramel on it through the extraction from the wood, it only tastes 86 proof. We actually I did a study one time with 55 bartenders. I figure if anybody's going to be able to taste something and see the proof, it's going to be bartenders.
Right.
And so I double blinded them. I brought a bottle. It didn't look like Whistle Pig. It was a 175, no labels on it. Went to a bar where all the bartenders go after hours and poured up 55 shots. And as a bartender would come in, I give them a shot and a 3x5 card. And I would say, sip this, enjoy it. When you're done, take the 3x5 card and write down the proof you think you just enjoyed. And at the end of the night, after all 55 shots are gone, we kind of pretended like it was a caucus, and we're holding up the cards one at a time, and announcing the number, and somebody's tabulating the results. The highest anybody guessed all night long was 90 proof, and the average was 86.0, which made me realize that the balance of getting rid of the tannins and balancing the caramel with the rye allowed us to hide about 14 points of proof. So if you want to drink it neat, it's not going to be offensive. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be niche. If you want to add a little water to it or a little ice, it's okay because it's 100 proof after all, and you're not going to over dilute it. And if you want to make a cocktail with it, every bartender would tell you they like working with 100 proof spirits because the alcohol doesn't get lost in the mixer. And I actually built all 22 classic rye cocktails with Whistle Pig before we released it to make sure how it would perform. And was glad to see that it actually performed well in all of them, which is kind of unusual for a spirit. Wow. Usually you kind of target, this one's really good for an old-fashioned, that one's really good for a Manhattan, and so on. But so 10-year-old's Mr. Versatile, and that's the backbone of what we do.
Okay. So you've already briefly mentioned the 12-year-old world, but go ahead and dig into that one a little bit more.
So I was up at the farm, and we think very strategically, and I was getting ready to go into a strategic just thought session. I locked myself in the farmhouse, told everybody, leave me alone. I'll subsist on coffee and orange juice until I get this figured out. And mostly what I was doing, I visualized I had a cookie sheet and a bunch of cookie dough. And I was trying to make sure the whole cookie sheet was covered. And the cookie sheet was what our plans were for our growth over the next few years. And the dough was what we had in the warehouse. And I needed to make sure that we could spread it out and cover the whole sheet without any holes. And so that was mostly what I was doing. But while I was at it, one of our thoughts is we want to be what I call the go-to grow up. When you leave bourbon, you want something bigger and bolder. You want to come to us. And that meant we got to keep an eye on the Scotch guys. Because and so my friend Dr. Bill Lumsden over at Glenmorangie is releasing all these marvelous finishes, Quinta Roban, Nectar d'Or, La Santa, and we got no game. Nothing. We had no finish at all. And so when I finally walked out 2 days later, after a good round of breakfast, I went to the guys with the money and I said, "We need some money." And they said, "How much?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, okay, let's go around and tell the way. What do we need it for?" And so I told them, and I explained, and immediately the answer was, "Yes, we need to do that." I didn't know much about finishes, but I do know a guy. And that's one of the benefits of being around as long as I have. I got a guy for everything. And so there's this fellow in Spain. I called him up and I said, "I don't know anything about finishes, and I need to know a lot. Would you please round up a lot of barrels for us?" And he goes, "Like what?" And I go, "I want every kind of fortified wine or high residual sugar content wine barrels that you can find in Europe." And he goes, "What, one or two of each?" And I go, "No, container loads, because I know you're going to tell me this is going to take you a year. And once you get them all rounded up and we figure out which ones we want, you're going to say it's going to take another year to get the number we need for production." And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "So just send me container loads. And I know it's going to be a little cost inefficient, but it'll get us a year. It'll get us a year leg up on this." And so we wound up with 5 different Madeiras: Malmsey, Boal, Cercial, Rainwater, and Verdelho. We wound up with 5 sherries: Fino, Oloroso, Amontillado, Manzanilla, and Pedro Jimenez. We wound up with 2 ports: Tawny and Ruby. We wound up with 3 high residual sugar contents: Tocai, Muscat, and French Sauterne. We even got Pierre Ferrand to kick in XO barrels. Now, if you add that up, that's 16 finishes. And now I'm going, okay, how am I going to sort through this mess? So we got the finishes all going, and then I did what I always do when I need help. I went to the bartenders. And over the next 2 years, we had focus groups. And I got about 500 bartenders in focus groups. And the send-up was, what are the 3 best individual finishes that will work well with each other? And we winnowed it down and winnowed it down. We finally got it to French Sauterne, Tawny Port, and Verdelho Madeira. So then we worked on those finishes to get them as good as we could get them. And then we took a breath and said, let's just see how these are received. So we sent out 2,400 bottles of pure Sauterne finish, 2,400 bottles of pure Madeira finish, and 1,200 bottles of pure port finish. And the first thing was they disappeared so fast it'd make your head swim. Mm-hmm. The second thing was the Sauterne got entered in the San Francisco International and won best rye whiskey in the world. And so we thought, okay, I guess we got something here. And we decided we should marry him. Now, everybody deserves at least one successful marriage. And I hope this is mine. And so for the next 6 months, I trooped around the country with bottles of pure finishes in my suitcase, and a graduated cylinder and an eyedropper. And every night I would try to see if I could come up with a marriage of the 3 that would work. And I treated it like a cocktail. I kind of have a bartender mentality, and the thought was, you need to be able to taste 4 components: Sauterne, Madeira, Port, and rye. You got to taste all of them, or why is it there? And number 2, it has to be balanced. And it took me 6 months before I finally got to the right combination of 63% Madeira, 30% Sauterne, 7% Port. And so what we do is, once it's 12 years old, we take it out of the aging barrels. 63% of it goes into the Madeira cask, 30% into the Sauterne, 7% into the Port. Each of those finishes has its own amount of time, and they're all different. And then once the first one's done, it goes into a marrying tank, and it waits, and then the next one, and the next one. And once they're all done, then it goes together. So if the 10-year-old was Mr. Versatile, the 12-year-old is dessert. It wasn't designed as a cocktail drink. It will make a killer old-fashioned, or a Vieux Carré. But what it really is if you were going to sit down and have a port or a cognac or a dessert wine, this is what you have. And it's just designed as a sipper.
Yeah. After an impressive 14 years serving Maker's Mark as its master distiller, Dave Pickerell left his position to become a consultant, where he worked with such notable companies as Corsair, Hill Rock Estate, and the distillery on George Washington's property. He joined the Whistle Pig team with the simple goal of making the finest rye whiskey possible. Dave Pickerell will be joining us after the break.
Let's talk about the people who make these shows happen. First up is the ABV Barrel Shop. It is the most unique shopping experience in the world of bourbon, as the ABV Barrel Shop only sells single barrels. Owners Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot select. With over 100 distilleries on board to sell us barrels, we are home to the most unique and diverse barrel pick selections in the bourbon world. By signing up for our email, you will always know what we have in stock. In addition to the single barrels, we'll have a gift shop featuring ABV Barrel Shop as well as ABV Network merchandise. We are partnering with vendors like Art Eatables and Old Man Bay Signs to bring you unique items you can't find anywhere else. We will also have a 24-seat classroom where we are offering educational and fun classes like Breakfast and Bourbon, a series where we pair donuts and bourbon, customer barrel picks, and opportunities to learn from master distillers and other bourbon dignitaries. Best of all, we feature a tasting bar where you can try before you buy. All of this is located in the St. Louis metro community of Arnold, Missouri. If you are in the St. Louis area, please stop by to say hi. If you're traveling in from outside the area, please take advantage of our hotel rates with the Drury Inn and Pear Tree Inn, less than a mile from our shop. This can be done via the links in our Visit St. Louis section on our website. Head over to abvbarrelshop.com to plan your trip. The ABV Barrel Shop. It's where single barrels live. Hi, this is Steve Akeley, owner of the ABV Network. We're sponsored by the Stave and Thief Society. This is where you, a bourbon enthusiast, can expand your knowledge and emerge a bourbon steward. In 2017, I completed my Executive Bourbon Steward certification. It's the most comprehensive bourbon certification program available and connects you with an expansive network of bourbon enthusiasts and professionals. Check out the full listing of in-person and online certifications and join the society today by enrolling at staveandthief.com. Okay, let's talk about the Neely Family Distillery. In 2018, I met Royce Neely at an industry event. He started appearing on our shows, and we became friends during my frequent trips to Kentucky. Today, he is amongst the leaders of young distillers leaving their mark on the bourbon industry. A visit to Neely Family Distillery yields insight on their unique family history, why their products are special, and gives you the opportunity to taste their whiskey, moonshine, and creams. Check them out at NeelyFamilyDistillery.com or visit them in Sparta, Kentucky.
This is Freddie Mills, and you're listening to the Bourbon Daily.
So, moving on to the 15-year straight rye.
Okay. So the 15 has got both a serious element and a little fun element in it. So, you know, it's no secret in the whole whiskey world about ages. You know, the Japanese fleet of spirits have all dropped their age statements. The Scotch guys, a lot of the older Scotch age statements are getting dropped. Even in bourbon world, there's a lot of age statements dropping. And so we'd already released a 10, we released a 12, and we said, we need to go counterculture. So we released a 15. And the send up on the 15 is it's the same stuff that goes into the 10. We just leave it in its second barrel till it's 14 and a half. And then we discovered some time ago that we actually have our own oak, Vermont oak. And it's 26 growth rings per inch. It's the tightest growth rings that I've ever seen in white oak. And so we decided to have our friends at Independent Stave right here in Missouri make a little shameless plug.
Sure.
But we asked them if they'd be interested in working with us. And so I and the owner, Brad, I've known since he was a kid. I used to work with his dad. Mm-hmm. And Brad just loves playing and experimenting, and he's got a very scientific mind. So I came down, had dinner with him, and we're sitting down talking about this wood and what we can do with it. And, you know, and okay, we want to air dry it to do this, and then we want to toast it to do that, and then we want to char the heads and staves differently. And we came up with a protocol that's different than anything he's ever done. It half treats it like a wine barrel, half treats it like a bourbon barrel. And then we agreed that he couldn't share it with anybody and that nobody else could ever use our protocol except us. And so we made the barrels, ship them back, and the last 6 months, the whiskey spends in those barrels. Now, the toast regime was done to pull out certain very specific notes. So when you taste the 15, it's rye for spice lovers. Where the 10-year-old is spicy on the front end and caramel, butterscotch, and vanilla on the back, the 15, the spice hangs with it all the way to the end. And if you've ever been to a campfire and toasted marshmallows, I'm betting most of y'all light the marshmallow on fire, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean that's me. I get it in there and catch it on fire, and I make sure that every last square inch of it's burnt. And if you're really good, you can just grab them and pull the char layer off,
Yes.
Yep.
and eat that, and then you can go back and get a second round, right? Imagine that toasted marshmallow. You can taste that in the whiskey, and it's just because I can. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of part of the fun element. So part of it is we're going to leave it at 15 years. So we're poking everybody in the ribs going, I don't know what your problem is with age statement, but we're fine. And so the 15 won't be a constantly available product because we'll only sell what we've got, and then we'll stop and wait till we've got more and then sell that. So the 15 we're going to defend the age statement on. We're not going to drop it. We could sell more. We just won't.
Mm-hmm. Right. So moving on, I guess, to the flagship, which is Boss Hog.
Boss Hog is great fun. So Boss Hog is a vintage product. The government won't let us declare a vintage because they say that the vintage declarations are reserved for wine, and the American people might be deceived and think that there's wine in the bottle and accidentally overconsume. I have more faith in the American people apparently than the government does, but nonetheless, I can't call it a vintage. So we were sitting around going, well, what are we going to call it? And somebody said, well, what's in the bottle? And someone else goes, well, it's Boss. It's the best thing that we've got. And it took a microsecond to go from Boss to Boss Hog because there's piggy humor in everything that we do. And so every time we have a release of Boss Hog, I dress as Boss Hog. I carry around a costume that's all white. And
I've seen that online, yeah. It's a good look.
It's epic.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it is vintage, so it's not an every year thing. It's just whenever. And we have 5 promises. The first promise is it'll be barrel proof. Second promise is it'll be single barrel. The third promise is irrespective of whatever proof it comes out of the barrel, it will not burn the back of your throat. We actually released our very first one was 135-ish proof. Still didn't burn the back of your throat. Because of the way we've gotten rid of the tannins and balanced the caramels up. The fourth is that it will be distinctly unique from anything we've ever done. And the fifth is it'll be stupendous. And if I can't do all 5, we just won't have a Boss Hog. Mm-hmm. In proof of that, the one that's coming out right now is only our 4th release. This particular one is 14-year-old that was finished in Armagnac casks. And it's referred to as the Black Prince. And the Black Prince is Raj and I both love history, and the Black Prince was a British prince, and he was notorious for going to France and pillaging. And he was a lot like Willie Tecumseh Sherman. He just burned his way through France, and which is how he got his name, the Black Prince. When he got to the Armagnac region, though, he fell in love with Armagnac and decided to spare the region because of his love for Armagnac. And so that's why we have a chainmail pig on the top of our bottle and named it the Black Prince, because of the love for Armagnac. Now, the fun thing about this particular release is we entered it in the San Francisco International, and it was declared the best whiskey in the world. And so I'm very proud of the team for being able to put together that.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're very honored. I've never beat all of the Scots before. So again, keeping with that theme, it's about who you beat. When the answer is everybody.
Yeah, it is. One of the things you mentioned now several times is the farm. Tell us a little bit like what it's like there.
It's a farm. It's there's pigs and sheep and goats and horses on the farm, and it's remote. it's a mile and a half from the nearest paved surface. We sit down in a valley. The Lemon Fair River runs through. Now, it's kind of a misnomer to call it a river because in the summer you can walk across on the rocks and not get your feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
But when the snow melt is coming, it's a raging torrent. But we've got rolling hills all around us. The views are glorious. As one of our rye fields is one of my favorite places in the world. I like to go up there and bring an Adirondack chair and throw it up on the top of the field and face south, get a nice 3 fingers of whichever whistle pig I'm in the mood for and a nice cigar. And sit down, fire up the cigar, and when I look to my right, there's the Adirondack Mountains. When I look to my left, there's the Green Mountains. And it is just a glorious setting. Everything's right with the world. The distillery is in a repurposed barn, and the one end of it's distillery, the other end of it's kind of more of an entertainment area. There's a fireplace that if you're into Yule logs, it can last for 2 months. I mean, literally, I can stand up in the fireplace and not touch either side of it.
Wow.
And,
That's a fireplace.
And
I want to go to Whistle Pig.
Yeah.
you need to come visit. It really do. It's really beautiful, and and everything we do everything right there on site. So it's great fun to see.
So you mentioned him a couple times. Can you tell us about Whistle Pig owner Raj? I'm going to try and say his name. Bhakta?
Very good.
She got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got it.
I got it. I was sweating bullets over here.
Raj is a character. He did a stint on The Apprentice, season number 3. So he was the guy in the bow tie, and he made quite an impression on people. He gets very passionate about things, we're a pretty good match for each other. He loves history. I love history. In particular, and we both like Winston Churchill, which is why we have a pig on the label, because the send-up was we didn't have a lot of money when we were being founded, and so we went to the local liberal arts school, Middlebury College, and went to the art department and said, we need a logo. We want to have a contest. And, prize money goes to the winner. We get the rights to the art. And the send-up is, if Winston Churchill were a pig, what would he look like? And so what we got is this happy pig with a top hat and a bow tie, and he's just enjoying the finer things in life. And that concept was Raj's. And we got a great logo that's easily recognizable and didn't cost. We didn't have to pay a package design firm to do it. And one of the young students got beer money for a few months, and so it all worked out well. But he tried to be a politician at one point in time and made a credible run and to unseat an incumbent. Almost did it, but not quite. But he's a man with a vision and a passion, and he loves to party down with the best of us, and it's just having fun sitting around. We bonfires are a thing. We've got like several bonfire pits at Whistle Pig, and I can't tell you how many times we've sat around the fire and just told stories and caught up with one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Dave, our fans do like to travel. They like to visit places. I know Whistle Pig isn't open for tours, that type of thing, but there is a tasting room in Middlebury, Vermont, correct?
Yes. It's actually right next to the pewter company that makes all the toppers for our 15-year-old and our Boss Hog bottles.
Oh, cool.
And so you can go in, you can get a taste. I'm pretty sure the law has just changed too, to allow people to allow us to actually give tours on the site.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I think the law just changed on that. So let's stay tuned to this station.
Yeah.
But because if you can drop by, it's worth the visit, even though it's pretty remote.
You painted a pretty good picture of what that's like. So I want to go for sure. Yeah.
I feel like it's so closer. I'm close to it.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
She can pop
You're
in.
closer to it than all the rest of us are.
Yeah. So, Dave, just tell us a little bit about what you think the future holds for both you personally as well as Whistle Pig.
Well, at Whistle Pig, we're dedicated to continuing to make the best rye whiskeys, and we think we still got some room to go. I'm currently working on what may be the next round or two of Boss Hog. We're always playing with that. Mm-hmm. The next round of farm stock will be coming out early sometime next year. And we're playing with a couple of products. They would shoot me if I said anything about how much age we might have on the next one. But we've got a few things on the works there. And just continuing to grow the brand, and we're tickled to see how well it's being received. When I was at Makers, it was really interesting. When I first started there, people referred to it when they're ordering very formally. Yes, I'd like some Maker's Mark, please. Or I'd like a Maker's Mark and ginger or whatever. And then people started adopting it as their own, and it went from I'd like some Maker's Mark to you got the mark, or I'd like some red wax, or give me some Makers, and it was that adoption and the familiarity, I think, that was the flag to the explosive growth. And similarly at Whistle Pig, when we started out, it was Whistle Pig this and Whistle Pig that and Whistle Pig the other. Now you hear people walk in and go, "You got the pig?" And as people are, and we're beginning to see that same kind of, you got to have the pig,
right.
And so we're seeing that growth spurt that's concomitant with that, and so keeping up with all of that is really fun. We're talking about throwing another still on, and just having a lot of fun. With respect to me, in addition to Whistle Pig, I'm continuing to do projects with other folks. I have a Grammy Award-winning country and western singer that I'm working with, and
hints.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say. I don't know if he's ready for that quite yet.
Could you maybe sing a little bit of one of their songs?
Well, I don't know. What do you think about chicken fried?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm gonna have to Google that.
You have to Google that. Yeah.
Just a little chicken fried. Cold beer on a Friday night. Pair of jeans that fit just right. And the radio on. So that's my hint.
I'd say that's a pretty good one there. Yeah.
And I just signed a non-disclosure agreement with a heavy metal band.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, I can't say anything about that one yet. But having a little fun. And in the meantime, I'm here in Kansas right now with Jay Rieger and Company, and they're on the road to be one of the America's new preeminent distilleries. That one's great fun. It's a resurrection of a distillery that was founded in 1887 and died at Prohibition, and the three great grandson decided, let's bring it back.
Bring it back, yeah.
And so we have resurrected the distillery. I'm into resurrections. This is the third time I've done this, and we actually launched a pre-Prohibition style whiskey called J. Rieger and Company Kansas City Whiskey. That's doing an incredible job.
All right, we got to check that one out. Yeah,
just having a lot of you're here in town. Yeah, you need to definitely do that.
Yep. I'll pick up a bottle for sure. So, Dave, we certainly appreciate you taking some time and being with us. Fantastic interview. We really enjoyed it for sure.
It was excellent.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah,
you're a fantastic storyteller. You are fantastic.
You are. I mean, like the Bill Samuel story. You don't just tell what the story is. You give the background. It was just great. I enjoyed it so much. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I know people want to follow your journey, and both for your companies as well as you personally. Where can people find you? Would be the question.
Well, they can always find me on social media. I mean, the fun thing is there aren't any other Dave Pickerells. So I'm Dave Pickerell on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I don't tweet much, but Instagram and Facebook I'm pretty active on. So you can find me personally there. Certainly you can find my brands. You can go on Whistle Pig or Hill Rock sites and see that as well.
You think Renee just followed you? She picked up her phone when you were saying that.
Yeah, I did. I just did that.
It's pretty quick and easy, isn't it?
Again, Dave.
Only Dave Pickerell that came up.
Yep.
Thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Dave,
you.
this is great. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Dave, that was really great, man. Seriously.
That was great.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I love
You are, like I said before, you
Yeah.
are a fantastic storyteller.
Yeah.
I love telling stories. I actually there's a group that's like Storytellers International,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
and they actually invited me to just come to a meeting one time and just tell a story.
Yeah,
It's-
I can
You don't
see
even know
why.
what it is.
Completely, yeah,
Octopus.
completely charming. Yeah, I can see why.
It's Thank You Maker's Mark. They're the ones that pumped all the.
Bill Samuels Jr. for that first on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
What a test that was. Jeez.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
God! I mean, I honestly, I'm not sure I was even breathing during. It was that intense. I mean,
Wow.
because Gary Rodemeyer is when he walks in with a microphone and the lights and everything. It was intense.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're Bill Samuels Jr., you know some people, so you can make that kind of stuff happen, I guess. Not
Oh,
all of
yeah.
us could do that, but yeah. Oh.
He's Bill Samuels is the parties we used to have in his backyard were unbelievable. I mean, literally, Little Richard came one time. Casey and the Sunshine Band came.
No way.
We had in one night we had the Platters, the Coasters, and the Drifters.
Yep.
They each came and did a set, and then they all got up on stage and jammed. And
Together?
people
Wow.
were there at like 3:00 in the morning.
Just from like reading his life story, and we did a show on another program that we do about him. It does not surprise me that you would be there, and then Little Richard would just show up.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's just
Like it does not surprise me.
he is so funny. He sells himself as this big extrovert. He's really a massive introvert,
Yeah.
but he has a humongous energy. And so one of the things that always struck me is, he'd have these soirees for 2,000 people at his house. And he would have a reception line at the beginning, and everybody had to go to the reception line. And he would be wearing something garish. And remember, I mean, like one time he was wearing a pair of chaps with a fake bare butt. And the deal is, everybody walked through and they remembered Bill Samuels and his costume.
Yep.
After the reception line was done, he went to bed, and then at 9:00 he'd be asleep, and I'd be hosting his party until 3:00 in the morning.
But they saw him, so they're like, I was partying with Bill
did
Samuels.
you see Bill this?
Yeah.
And did you see Bill that? And nobody knew he was gone 4 hours earlier. I mean, but I learned the meaning of a good costume. The very first, I'd been on the company just a week or so, and we had our first video conference. So we're all in there. I'm wearing a suit and tie because I think I'm supposed to. This is before I really grew up, and and all of the team are in suits and ties, and this is when you had to go to Kinko's to do a video conference, and so we're in there making sure we know how to operate everything. And I look over in the corner, and there's this big pile of linen. And I'm thinking, well, that's tacky. They didn't clean up from the last group that was in here. And I'm checking. It's not in camera range. And so I'm going, all right, I won't worry about it now. Afterwards, I'm going to ask for a discount. Next thing I know, in walks Bill, and he's not wearing a suit. He's got a shirt and tie, but no coat on. And I'm figuring, well, he's probably like me. He hates the thing. So he'll throw it on at the last minute. I'm back to making sure I know how to run the slide part. Turn around and look, like 2 seconds before the thing's supposed to come on, and Bill is wearing all of the linen. And he's dressed like the Pope. He's got the gold Alpha and Omega collar clasp, the cape, the hood, the whole thing. The CFO is about ready to die, and the thing starts, and Bill gives a speech for 5 minutes in perfect King James English. The guys at the other end are dying laughing, and 20 years later, one of the guys confessed that he had to leave the room because he was going to pee. He was laughing so hard. But I learned he made a memory that they will never forget about that meeting, and he made a point. So the very next time we're doing a video conference, it just happens to be on Halloween. So I didn't ask anybody. I just went and got professionally made up as a vampire. I mean, I even let him make my gums blew. And I mean, it looked like I really needed to eat badly. And I got the Widow Peak and the whole thing. I come striding in. Everybody else is in suits. And they look at me and go, "What the heck?" And I'm going, "I think I got this, boys." And about 2 seconds later, Bill Samuels walks in dressed as the Great Pumpkin. And he looks at me and goes, "I like your style." And since then, I've learned that a good costume makes a really memorable experience. And so that's why I dress as Boss Hogg. And that's why, I mean, literally, I have a suitcase. It's just got costumes in it. That's all it is. There's like three or four different costumes in that, and that's all it's for.
That's cool. Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow.
It's just great fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yeah, it was definitely, Dave. And you've got so much going on. If there's ever something that you want to come on and promote, just let me know. You certainly drop me a line, and we would love to have you on anytime. You were fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were
Thank
great.
you.
We would love it. So yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
All right,
So
Dave.
take care.
Take care.
Bye, Dave. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
All right. Great show. Dave Pickerell was awesome. Had a lot of fun, and look forward to the
amazing.
next time we get together.
Yes.
Until then, take care, everybody. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
The Bourbon Show is part of the ABV Network. For more information or to become a sponsor, please visit abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and cheers!
Before we finish the show, let's talk about some great companies that support the ABV network. First up is Moonshine Still Pro. Moonshine Still Pro has a full line of products to help the home distiller. Whether you want to experiment on the stove in your kitchen or you're looking for a bigger setup in your backyard, owner Russell Creed and his team can help. They have multiple still offerings, accessories, and even grain from their partners at Goldstone Mill to assist you in making whiskey on par with your favorite distillery. They can also help you with some fabricated parts you probably can't make yourself if you are attempting a DIY still project. Learn more or order your still or parts at moonshinestillpro.com. Another friend of ours is the Goldstein family at Goldstone Mill. The Goldsteins offer a variety of heritage and heirloom grains to make the finest whiskeys in the world. Plus, they are more than just a grain company. They are truly consultants to make sure the grains they are providing to you or your business meet your highest expectations. Additionally, they work with mills around the country, ensuring shipping is as low as possible for their customers. If you are a distillery, brewery, or even doing this at home, Goldstone can assist you. Check them out at goldstonemill.com, call them at 217-254-6613, or check in via email at hello@goldstonemill.com. Last but not least is the ABV Barrel Shop. While we don't get to play in the allocated bourbon game because we aren't selling the other products you have to do to get those, we do have access via our friendships in the bourbon industry to some really cool stuff. Have you ever seen your favorite craft distiller selling some really cool limited offerings only in their gift shop? I'm talking things like the Hazmat offering Distillery 291 did for their 10th anniversary, or Neely Family Distillery's Papaw's birthday barrel. They don't have enough of it to send it out to distributors, so they only sell it via their gift shop. Well, companies like Distillery 291 and Neely Family Distillery have agreed to sell us 2 or 3 cases of these offerings moving forward, meaning our store will have the access to some of the rarest whiskeys in the world. Way more difficult to come by than the allocated bourbon offerings with a national release. Yes, they will be extremely tough to come by, but if you're a customer of our store, you'll have a chance to get them. Get signed up for our email or text list over at abvbarrelshop.com so you don't miss out.
The Bourbon Daily is part of the ABV Network. For more information or to become a sponsor, please visit abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.